Good evening. This December the 19th, 2023 Board of Aldermen meeting is hereby called to order. I'd like to ask Alderwoman Pat Hamilton to lead us in our prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance that I'll lead. Please stand.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we thank you for this opportunity to gather tonight. Dear Father, we especially thank you for all the meetings this past year. Since this will be our last meeting, dear Lord, we can't help but reflect back and see so much that has been accomplished this past year. Dear Lord, we thank you for being with us and being with us during the meetings. And we especially thank you this Christmas season for sending your Son, Jesus Christ. And dear Lord, we just pray now that as we go into this coming meeting, dear Lord, we ask you to guide our mayor, guide us with the decisions that we make. This we ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Just remind the board and the audience tonight that our meeting is streamed live on YouTube, and also held in archive for at least 7 years, just to make you aware of that. Also, a couple changes. Thank you, I believe, to communications and/or IT for the name plates that have been restructured on the front to get the name plates down out of the eye level view, and hopefully everyone else will be elevated before long so that the board can see the citizens and the citizens can see the board as business takes place. Madam Clerk, if you would conduct roll call.
Aldridge. Here. Collins.
Here.
Dickerson.
Here.
Earhart.
Here.
Hamilton.
Here.
Henderson. Here. Wallace.
Here.
Everyone's present, quorum established. Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Board, you have the approval request for the minutes of December the 5th, 2023. You've had those. Any questions about the minutes? Any questions, comments, or motions?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Ms. Hamilton. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Collins. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes approved as written. Following the agenda, mayor's update, just a couple of items for the board. The RTP, the Recreational Trail Program grant through the Mississippi Wildlife, Fisheries and Parks is complete at the main park. That was 10 foot wide and 1 mile of paved walking trail in the city park, being enjoyed by many people. Very nice in the park. Total cost was $198,827.84. The grant produced $120,000 of that amount, and the remaining $78,827.84 was paid for by city funds. So a good add to that, and thanks everyone for working on it. The Parks and Recs team, engineering, communications, CFO Jason May, who helped get this complete. It's a very nice ad. If you haven't been out there, you may want to check that out. Food pantry, we had a successful year as far as a drive for food donated to the food pantry. Record numbers was given. Things were set up at City Hall and other locations to get the food to the Olive Branch Food Pantry, and it was delivered earlier this week. You may have noticed that the water tower at Hacks Cross Road in 78 by Methodist Hospital, the logos are lit up. The city brand is lit up, as well as Methodist Hospital's logo. They were generous and cost shared with us 50-50 on that, so that the 40-some thousand vehicles a day that transit 78 and Hacks Cross Road can see our brands and help us be easily recognizable. Lastly, I have by the end of this week, but I understand tonight you can see the lights at the very top of the City Hall have been added, similar to what's on the Wesson House, white lights that will go off or be on from dusk to dawn, and in timing just like the Wesson House. So if you get a chance to look at that and give us some feedback if those need to be adjusted, but we're pleased to get that added as well to illuminate City Hall, the Wesson House, and hopefully Old Town will catch on as well and add some of those lights, decorative lights through Old Town also. And that's it for the mayor's update. Any questions of me? Hearing none, consent agenda you have before you. Any questions or motions on the consent agenda? Collins, motion to approve. Second, Ms. Henderson, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Consent agenda approved as is. Planning Commission old business. This is a public hearing for consideration of application to amend the project text and development plan for Dancing Oaks submitted by Tony Jones Realty on behalf of John H. White, property owner. The request is to allow a truck stop as a permitted use on a portion of a 7.0, a 7-acre plus or minus parcel zone C4 planned commercial district. The subject property is located on the east side of Hacks Cross Road, just north of Progress Way. A public hearing date was set for this particular date. It was set on November the 21st for a public hearing tonight. Is there a staff report?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Mayor Aldermen, before you is a request to consider really what is an amendment to the preliminary development plan for Dancing Oaks plant development. The property is Zone C4 Plant Commercial District. It was so designated by the county in October 2008 when the project text was approved. The project text, as approved, actually permits C-store with gas pumps as a use by right, so it's a permitted use on the property. The applicant, the area designated here in yellow on the map before you, that is the entire area of the PD, the planned development as currently designated. That is the entire area. And the way the project text was written today, you could have gas stations anywhere on that piece of property. So you could have a gas station north of Progress Way, south of Progress Way, north of Nair Road, south of Nair Road, anywhere on that piece of property, you can have multiple gas stations. What this application before you does, which is something staff really pushed the applicant to do, was to eliminate the possibility of having those multiple gas stations on this piece of property, which really lends itself to, especially at the intersection of Hacks and Nair to the south. If this amendment were approved, we would not have this proliferation of gas stations on this particular piece of property. So the preliminary development plan that was approved in 2003 had a vision of these having large shops and offices everywhere, which is just not realistic. Over time, a lot has changed in this area that has really kind of made that plan unrealistic. The application, therefore, seeks to make that area designated in red into C-store, really already the permitted use, with truck parking at the back, as shown on the site plan you have at the bottom of your screen to the right. So that basically would be the layout. When this was first considered by the Planning Commission at their meeting in November, it only had one building. You did not have this second building in front of where you have the trucks parking at the back. But the neighborhood, they were concerned about the possibility of sitting on Wise Drive and being able to see those trucks. They didn't want that. So the applicant decided to add another building there that would serve as a buffer between Hacks Cross Road and the truck parking area at the back. So that is why you had that second building added. As I did indicate, in 2008, 2009, when this project text was approved, this was essentially an agricultural area to the east, as you see on the map before you. So in 2009, that is the area map. It was essentially green, all agriculture. Since then, there has been significant industrial development to the east that has changed the character of this area and will make this amendment to provide an opportunity for truck parking and necessities, a public need, one would say. There are over currently, and including the square footage of industrial warehouses that have been approved in this legacy park, there are over 6 million square feet of industrial warehouses. That is a lot of trucking activity that takes place there. And so being able to provide commercial services that can, service those trucks is a public need. Just as we have over here with the Quick Trip. Quick Trip is really helping to take away truck traffic all across the city. We're able to have folks just go in there, feel, park, and then leave the city. So this kind of an analysis, the zoning ordinance has a number of provisions on how we review any changes that are requested in the C4 zoning district. Consistency with the minimum development standards of the C4, all the conditions or the development standards for the Dancing Oaks PD will remain in place. None of them is requested to be changed. So in terms of buffer, parking requirement, everything that you had required in the project text for the C4, that is being maintained in this project text, in this amendment. The second is for the board to find that the request has been made by the property owner. Yes, it's been made by the property owner. The third has to do with traffic conditions. This is actually estimated that it will reduce traffic, especially truck traffic driving across the city. From the industrial park right down to Flying Jade is about 2.23 miles. That's where trucks currently go to now. Those of them that go to Quick Trip is 5.09 miles. And the very next truck stop area where you have any kind of truck parking is in Bluebird, which is 7.39 miles. So if you just take that and aggregate, that's over 15 miles of truck traffic on public street that will be reduced by having this at this particular corner. When the board last year amended the zoning ordinance, you had two requirements to have any area that has to do with truck stop. One, it has to be within half a mile of a truck route, and the property must be minimum 2 acres in size. So this is 7 acres, and it is Hacks Cross Road, Progress Way. Those are all truck routes. It's well within that half a mile requirement. So it meets those two specifications. Public utilities are available around this property, and it will be the responsibility of the developer to extend them to serve any development on the site. The future land use map designates the site for industrial distribution. Those are areas that generally are intended or lend themselves to trucking activities. As such, the requested amendment aligns with the future land use map. This is the preliminary development plan. It incorporates all the features that are currently required in the Dancing Oaks PD. All of them are included in this development site plan. The Planning Commission at its meeting on December 12th reviewed this and unanimously recommended approval subject to this upon finding that the character of the area has changed. The comprehensive plan designates the property for industrial distribution activities, which include trucking support services, and the proposed development has the potential to reduce truck traffic congestion on public streets. All other criteria having been met, the Planning Commission recommended approval subject to these conditions 1 to 5. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Assam. Does the board have any questions of Assam regarding the staff report? Okay. Mr. Wallace?
The structure that's below, if you look at the bottom of the drawing, the structure here, is this going to be a part of it, or is it going to be taken down, or do you know what the proposal is? There seems to be a structure at the bottom.
No, sir, I think that is an area map that was included in the project text when the project text was adopted back in 2008.
So it doesn't exist now?
So it doesn't exist today. I think that is directly below John Deere.
Okay.
That's directly south of John Deere. It doesn't exist today. This will not extend down to that area.
And it was already, this is a development's already approved. It's basically adding a building and allowing trucking, correct?
Really, fundamentally, that's what it is.
And those approvals, majority of those approvals came from the county back in 2007 or 8, is that correct?
2008, October 10, 2008.
Assam, did I see there was 12 truck stalls? Is that the number?
Conceptually, when they went to the Planning Commission initially in November, they had 16. The Planning Commission asked that they reduce it to that 12. That's why you have that number 12. And also to align it, if you look at the western, there are 2 buildings. The western building wall of the second building lines up with, the very last truck parking spaces, was to make sure that that area is just small enough to ensure it will be fully buffered from the road.
One other question. If there's 12 trucks there and somebody pulls up and needs to stop, they can't pull out on Progress Way and park on the side of the road?
No.
Okay.
That would be prohibited. You cannot park on public street. You cannot park
Okay.
on Progress Way. And I think that was part of the reason the Planning Commission also asked the applicant to increase the stacking lane behind the building from where you have the filling station down to Progress Way. Initially, it was 106 feet. They increased it to about 204 feet to
Okay.
give more room for trucks to stand on the property instead of being on Progress Way.
Okay.
So I have, excuse me, a question for clarification. If I heard you right, that in 2008, when the county approved this, this allows for multiple C-stores by right there. However, we approved something within this past year limiting locations like this to no more than, if I believe, 2, and they have to be on a hard corner or a major intersection of a highway or major road. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, with a caveat. For this particular piece of property, actually, Progress Way and Hacks is a hard corner. There's a traffic light at that intersection.
Okay.
Yep,
So it
that's the
will be-
differentiator, no more than 2 per hard corner and at a signalized intersection. There has to be a traffic signal there.
Yes, sir. But for C4 property, and that's a caveat, for C4 property, they are not required to be at a hard corner. That is left to the discretion of the board
Right.
for C4 property.
Okay.
Don't they bring their property rights with them when they came into the city? Even though we had changed the ordinance, their rules didn't change as far as their property rights that they already had obtained, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because it's C4,
Because
it's
it's
C4.
or another planned district, but in this case, C4.
One side note, Mr. Dickerson, that I know you asked about the truck parking, just so the board will know, because the off-ramps on 78, we know we're getting tractor trailers there all night long. The police chief Cox and I have made a formal request of MDOT to make those no parking ramps, and they're working to do that. I spoke with them last week, and we're gonna try to get the trucks off those ramps. I know they've gotta go somewhere, but too much parking on the street and too dangerous, people getting on and off the ramps. Sorry to defer there. Any other questions on the staff report? Does the applicant have anything they wish to add about this application?
Mr. Mayor, Board, my name's Tony Jones. I live at 6320 Timber Oaks. I moved recently in Olive Branch. I think the staff report pretty well summarizes where we are and the changes that were done as a result of the being tabled at the Planning Commission from the first meeting. So I'll be glad to try to answer any questions, but on behalf of the White family, we appreciate your consideration
Thank you.
with this.
Any questions of Mr. Jones?
I do have one, and this probably ties into staff as well. You know, you do quality developments. I have no problem with that, and I know there's a need for trucks to park somewhere besides our streets. I personally don't like this location, and my question is, would it not be better suited, and I know this may not be your development, but if you go to Goodman Road and go east toward Legacy Park, we see some, you know, C4 and C2 applications. I think it would be better suited right there, and I guess my question is, why would we bring it down in Hacks Cross Road across from a residential neighborhood?
The light there and access north and south to 78, I-22, 78, and also back north to Hacks. That location and the size. It's hard to get a parcel with those dimensions specifically. You've got a 23-acre parcel and with limited frontage and access on Goodman Road on the other corner. So it may or may not be doable on the other corner, but that's why the request is for this site.
So you're saying limited access on that Oak Park, and then that C2 is probably why it's moved south?
Well, yeah, the state highway,
Right.
you don't have any access off of 302.
Okay.
Hey,
So-
John, let me ask you something, and it may not be good for us. We got a 6-foot high OPEC fence. Is there a problem having it being an 8-foot fence? I mean, the
only reason I'm doing that just because of noise. I think it would, the higher, the more buffer you have,
To the
it might be
north.
quieter.
On
Have
the
an
north
8-foot
side?
8-foot fence instead of a 6-foot fence.
I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
On the north side of the property.
Yeah,
Okay, and that, okay, yeah, I don't see that being a problem.
I mean, because the north side is, we have approved it already for mixed use and all that. And so
I don't see that being a
one day
problem.
it might, and with the trucks parked there too, I mean, I don't know what that would, how much that would help, but I would think it would cut some of the noise down.
I don't see that being
Okay.
a problem, no, sir.
Tony, one other question. The rental building, is that designed for one tenant or is that multi-tenant?
The remaining property or that?
Yeah, that second building that's being built, is that intended for just one tenant or is that gonna be divided up in?
It would have bays for potentially
Okay.
multi-tenants, yes.
Any additional questions of the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you for your
This
consideration.
is a public hearing for this property. Anyone that is here to speak on behalf of, in favor of this application, please come forward. Anyone here to speak in favor of the application that has not already spoken, please come forward. Anyone here to speak in opposition of this application for the truck stop, come forward. Any opposition to this application? Public hearing is closed. Does the board have any other questions?
I'll make a motion, we approve it, but I'd like to change it to an 8-foot fence instead of a 6-foot fence on the, you know, on the north side there. It says, just says OPEC fence. You wanna make it
I think it needs to be.
hardy
vinyl.
board or something?
Yeah, it's not
So
a non-wood
it's-
substance,
It's currently labeled as a composite fence.
composite fence.
Composite.
Okay.
Yes, it's currently
Okay.
labeled as
So the
All right.
motion is to approve as is, but have an 8-foot fence composite instead of 6-foot fence.
Yes, sir.
Is that the motion, Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Second, Mr. Dickerson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Public hearing date for consideration of a zoning map amendment submitted by Joseph Eccles on behalf of Patricia Bogan Taylor and Ruby Bogan Harvey, property owners. The request is to rezone the 2.02 plus or minus acres subject property from R2, single-family residential district, to R4, multifamily residential district, and to adopt the site development plan for a 12-unit multifamily townhomes gated community. The property is located at the southwest corner of West Sandage Road and Humphrey Drive, known as 7841 West Sandage Road. Public hearing date was set for this meeting for tonight on November the 21st, 2023. Staff report, please.
Yes, sir. The first slide is a depiction of the subject property. Again, it's a little bit over 2 acres in size, and we're located approximately 1 mile to the west of Highway 305, and we're on the south side of West Sandage Road. The purpose of the application tonight is to do 2 things: to rezone the property from R2, which is its current designation, to R4, which is multifamily residential. And as part of rezoning to R4, our code also has a requirement that you would adopt a site plan or preliminary site plan for development of the property. And then later on in the agenda, in a subsequent item, we have a subdivision plat to plat the property into a single lot. But ultimately, the proposal is to develop 6 duplex buildings, which would be 12 units on the 2-acre piece of property. And this shows you a copy of the plan. As far as some background information, there was a single-family home on the property. The tax records show was there from 1974. It was demolished in 2021, and the property is currently vacant except for a driveway that at one time apparently served the home. Again, our property accesses from West Sandage Road and we do have public utilities available in the area to support development of the property. As far as surrounding zoning, here's our subject property shown as R2. To the north, we have R4 property, multifamily residential, and that's the site of the Sandage Hill Apartments. To the east of the subject property, you can see we have a vacant piece of land that is designated as C1 or neighborhood commercial. And then to the south and to the west of the property is the project that you approved in a PD about this time last year for the Olive Branch RV Park, and that kind of wraps around the property boundary on both sides. And this shows you a depiction of the subject property in the red square there, and you can see the master plan that you approved last year for the Olive Branch RV Park that surrounds the property. As far as our analysis goes, there's no claim of the original zoning classification for the property being a mistake. As far as the character of the neighborhood, the applicant has made a point that the neighborhood has changed quite significantly since the time the single-family home was there or built there in the 1970s. You can see what we have going on around the property. Again, I had mentioned the RV park immediately near the property, and this property owner also owns a piece of R2 that's located just to the east of the subject property. Mentioned earlier the apartments in the R4 district, and then we have quite a bit of single family around the property along Ross Road to the north and then to the south, and then we have more single family as you move farther to the west. Obviously, the biggest changes that have occurred in this area over the years is the amount of development we've had in the M1 light industrial zoning district that you see. And then more recently, we've had a C-store, a building reconverted into a C-store there at the southeast corner of West Sandage and Ross, and we've had some improvements for a truck service repair business located a little bit to the south of that. Our comp plan, comprehensive plan that we adopted last year about this time, talked about in one of its policies the need to diversify the housing stock of the city, and citing a policy, new residential growth will be primarily comprised of single-family homes, but the future land use plan recognizes the need for diversification of the city's housing stock. So here you can see our subject property, and it's located in the suburban neighborhood future land use map designation, and that category calls for maximum of 4 dwelling units per acre. And then across the street where we have the Sandage Apartments, we have a medium density residential property which is listed as a maximum recommendation of 8 dwelling units per acre. So we're right in between that. We have a proposal for basically 12 dwelling units on a little bit over 2 acres, so it comes out to just a little bit less than 6 units per acre. So we're not really significantly higher than the suburban neighborhood. We're lower than the medium density residential, and we're meeting this policy of trying to help to diversify our single family housing stock, and the duplex product is one that we don't have much of in our city. If you take a look out from our subject property, this shows you the future land use map. Here's our subject property, and one of the items that I was discussing with Alderwoman Hamilton earlier today is what's going to happen as you go farther to the west on Ross Road, and you can see that the plan, future land use map, shows that area designated for single-family residential or suburban residential located to the west, and then here at the corner we have the Thunderbrook planned unit development, and that's an area that's designated for a mixed-use center. So this is the plan. Our subject property would be over here off of the picture, and as you come down Sandage Road, it ends right here currently, but you can see the plan that was approved a couple years ago for the Thunderbrook property. You can see that's all a single-family designated area. You'd have Sandage Road up through this way, cutting back down here, and then we've approved this area for mixed-use buildings, which would be lower-level retail and possibly, apartment units on top of that. And that was a picture that was shown in that Thunderbird plan. So you can see how, at least as we go into the future, that the area of the subject property, we're kind of transitioning into maybe a higher density residential category. And as we get all the way to the corner of Craft Road, we could have something that would be a mixed-use development where we're having a little bit higher densities as well. As far as the site plan, it's depicted here, and this deals with several factors that are listed. Do we have adequate open space, drainage facilities? How does our land use fit in, proposed land use fit in? Do we have adequate community facilities? And are we complying with the comprehensive plan, which I just discussed? You can see we have proposed detention pond here. We have substantial open space along Sandage Road. This proposal is for a private road. This is to be gated out here. So you see some gates here off of Sandage Road. You can see the units, and they have, all of them would have two-car garages, and you can see some area for stacking of vehicles in the driveways as well. And again, this would all be behind a gate, so this would be a private driveway and not a public road. The Planning Commission reviewed this item at their December 12th meeting, and by a unanimous 5-0 margin did pass a motion approving the requested rezoning and the associated site development plan, with that site development plan being subject to the 6 conditions as noted. Number 3 deals with a 6-foot high composite fence required around the perimeter of the site. And this is just a preliminary plan that you can see depicted, so they would have to follow through with the staff and submit, full site, civil, landscape plans, et cetera, for the staff review and approval. That concludes the staff presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gambone. Any questions of Mr. Gambone regarding the staff report?
I do have some questions. I'll start with Mr. Gambone. Okay, these will be rentals, correct?
Well, we have a later agenda item that proposes them all on a single lot, so I would presume, unless the developer is planning to do a condominium-style development, in all likelihood, they would be rentals.
Do we know what sizes these?
I believe a song had talked to the applicant, Ms. Bogan. I believe she's out there, and she may want to answer that question for you.
I should have covered earlier, but when you come forward and address the board, once you get complete, if you will, fill out one of the blue cards on the table behind the lectern and give that to the clerk, and just begin by giving us your name and home address, please.
Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Patricia Bogan Taylor, and we are the owners at 7841 West Sandage. You get 2 of us.
Good evening. I'm Ruby Bogan Harvey, and we are joint owners of the property.
Yeah. Okay, and the question was the
Okay.
footage?
Yes, thank you. I'm interested in what you're looking at for the typical square footage of each of the units.
Okay, each unit will be 1,904 square feet.
Say that again?
1904.
19.
That doesn't include the garage. The garage is 431 square feet, so it's separate.
So footprint would be about 2350 in that area, okay?
Good. Okay, when it comes to the exterior, is there a percentage of brick or the siding that is very durable, or is most of this wood?
Well, no, the siding of it, our preference is to have that brick for the side of it.
Okay.
You can't really see that on the picture.
Right.
Okay, on the fence, and this may be for Mr. Gambone, we already have a fence that's going to be in place somewhere along the way with the camping that we approved. How does that work with their fence on their project?
That's a good question. I go back to this slide. This is again, their property superimposed with the master plan. So here you had a fence that's located on the RV property, and then they were required to have a 50-foot landscape buffer surrounding on the outside of that fence. So in my opinion, if that fence was there, maybe their fence could extend. They would have to work this out with the, the Olive Branch RV Park, and some of it would just depend on who developed first. But I would think they could possibly close it in right there along that location and not have to have fences that would be 50 feet apart around an open space. It's something that could probably be worked out, but I would say it would be the first one in would be the one that would be building the fence. Of course, over here, they would still need to do their 50-foot wide, or 50-foot, I'm sorry, there's no 50-foot buffer there, so they would have to do their 6-foot high fence along their eastern boundary here.
If it's okay, we'd like to ask our project consultant with us that did our design also on the fencing. You mind coming
Sure.
up, Mr. Joseph Eccles?
Well, y'all own all the houses. Are you gonna personally own all the houses, or y'all gonna sell them, or?
Well, right now, we have that as an option to sell.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we have that
Good.
as an option.
So you'll have a homeowners association, or?
Yeah, it would be a separate homeowners association if we decide to sell them.
Okay.
That you wish to speak, come
Oh,
forward, sir.
yeah,
Name and address, and you can address the board, please.
Hello, my name is Joseph Eccles, and I'll be working on the architectural and the development management of this project. And so I'm happy to actually be a part of this project with them. I'm really happy to see that it's been approved once, and I'm hoping that we get approved again tonight. I can answer any questions if anyone wants to ask a question.
I think the two questions, Ms. Hamilton brought up one with the composite fence, and I think, Mr. Gambone, would that be more appropriate if this were to be approved, that they work with staff on how to tie that fencing in with the RV park?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the one thing that I think would help the development, and, I like the concept, but is I'd like to see maybe a minimum of 50% brick or stone, the minimum. You can do more if you want, and then a composite type material such as hardy board, rather than wood, because wood tends to, sometimes people don't paint enough, and it.
Yeah.
So that, I think that would enhance the quality and the longevity of it if you're okay with that.
Oh, exactly, yeah. Okay.
And I do like the square footage aspect. We appreciate that. Sometimes we get nice drawings and then it comes back and it's a little too small, so.
And for the board's knowledge, Ms. Taylor and Ms. Harvey and I had the conversation about the private driveway or the private street. Since it's a gated community, then that responsibility would fall on your HOA or whoever owns these, because the city cannot improve or do any maintenance work on a private street that every citizen in Olive Branch can't use. The board's had situations in the last few months where a gated community came back after 20 years and said, we can't afford to fix these streets. Well, it's been a private gate and everyone's been locked out, which is okay. The landowner has a right to do that, but at the same time, the city legally cannot help with a street that every citizen can't use.
Yeah, well, as the director said, that this would be a private driveway rather than a street. That's one address. It wouldn't be.
Okay.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
This being a public hearing, is there anyone here to speak either for or against this application? Is there anyone here to speak either for or against this application? Final call, anyone for or against? Seeing none, public hearing is closed.
And Mayor, may I ask something before we get motions? Is, if I read this correctly, this section here strictly deals with the rezoning. So, Mr. Dye, if it were approved, would it be more appropriate to ask some of the composite makeups and square footage be added on the planning commission next section?
Actually, this is similar to approval of a planned district rezoning. So you can have one motion, second, and vote. That would be to rezone the property to, presumably if the board voted to rezone it to R4, and adopt the site plan subject to conditions.
Okay.
And so any conditions are attached to the site plan approval, not to the rezoning. So if the board votes to rezone it, it's rezoned to R4. And the applicant, the owner, and whoever the owner may be going forward could do on the property anything that you can do in R4. And then there would also be the approval of the site plan, and that's where you would attach various conditions, such as the fencing or a brick content requirement, anything of that nature.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Or is there a motion to,
I got a question,
Collins?
Gambone.
Yes, sir.
Again, I was trying to address the thing, is it a homeowners association or?
No, this is a request to rezone it to R4 multifamily.
Okay.
And so your typical configuration would be that there would be one owner of the property. And of course, you have a request on Planning Commission new business to plat it as a single lot, which assumes that there's one owner.
Okay,
And then within that single lot, you would have multiple apartment units, or in this case, more townhome type unit, but still an apartment concept unless, as Mr. Gambone stated, unless they developed it as a condominium, but you still would have ownership in that instance of the interior, but you would have common ownership of the outside, and there could be some sort of property owners association in that context.
So
If
it'd be
it
up to-
develops as an apartment complex, there's not an HOA per se, there would
Yeah.
be an owner that has a manager.
well, that's why I was asking on the thing, so it'd be up to the owners to set up whatever they want to set up.
The owner of the complex, not the individual renters of the
Okay.
units. That's
But-
right.
But I was just trying to make sure if they sell them individually, the owner of the complex is still responsible.
They would have
Right.
to establish a condominium association to sell them individually, and that's not what's been proposed at this point.
If
I
they
just want
chose
y'all
to-
to be sure, you take care of yourselves on it.
But if they decided at a later date to sell, I don't know, say family members decide they want to buy one of these, couldn't they recreate it in their own, since they're gonna be the owners, can they recreate it, like a homeowners association, break it into a property, separate property and sell?
The formation of an HOA assumes that you have a combination or a group of homeowners who have ownership interest in a multi-lot development. And so what this is being proposed as is a one-lot R4 development, which is an apartment complex.
Okay.
In order to divide those, if, for example, I guess the picture of the units 1 through however many that is on the screen, if the owner of unit 1 wanted to own that unit, they'd have to come in and somehow divide that property into a further subdivision. I can't guarantee you, take an analysis by planning as to whether there's even a configuration where there would be compliant lots. But that would, they could do that today under the current zoning, of divide property into however many lots could fit on 2 acres in R2, or R3 is the case may
That
be.
was what I was more or less asking.
Right.
If all of a sudden if they decide to sell the lot, they're gonna have to somehow or another come up with it, because we're approving one lot.
Yeah, that's right. That's,
And a
it's
one
really
complex.
the request to rezone it is a request moving away from the concept of dividing this
Yeah.
into separate ownerships. What's the request to rezone and approve an apartment site plan is a request to develop it as an apartment complex.
And they would have to come back if they changed their
Yeah,
mind.
That's
to-
correct.
yes.
That's
And
what
if it
I
was a request to
kinda
rezone it to something
Right.
else, you'd have the change in need criteria that would have to be proven as well.
Okay.
any additional questions, board? Or any motions to move this from R2, single-family residential district, to R4, multifamily residential district? Is there a motion to do that?
I make a motion to approve it as applied.
Mr. Collins, motion to approve. Is there a second? Mr. Wallace, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Next items, Planning Commission new business. Number 1, subset A through E. These are consent agenda items with minor changes. Does the board need any additional information on this? It's either setting a public hearing date, which is just a matter, administrative matter, or final plat approval. Any questions on items A through E? Or any approval to move forward with these as set? Mr. Wallace, motion to approve the consent agenda, the public hearing items, and Mr. Wallace also, does that include items D and E for the final plat and the revision? D and E on the second page are not,
Was it your motion to approve the planning commission consent item?
okay, very good. I thought I heard public hearing date. Motion is on the table to approve these public hearing, these consent agenda items, A through E. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Earhart. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Planning Commission, new business continued, item number 2, consideration of application for a final plat for Bogan 1 lot subdivision. Jim, Mr. Shumpert, before you leave, I would like for the board to acknowledge we had a guest tonight, and I almost let him slip away, but Jim Shumpert served on the Planning Commission for over 10 years and has retired and gone on to other things, but I know I got to thank you in your meeting the other night, but I wanted the board to get a chance to thank you tonight for serving on the Planning Commission as well. Thank you, Jim.
Mayor, I would like to say that Mr. Shumpert's done an excellent job. He lives in Ward 2. I've watched it, and for 10 years, he's been just right there taking care of business, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Shumpert.
Awesome. Yes, thank you very much. We have some dedicated citizens that serve on these boards, without a doubt, and we're very, very appreciative of that. Continuing, item 2, consideration of application for a final plat for Bogan 1 lot subdivision submitted by Patricia Bogan Taylor and Ruby Bogan Harvey, property owners. The request is to create a 1-lot subdivision of 2.02 plus or minus acres. The subject property is currently zoned R2 single-family residential district, but has an open application to be rezoned to R4 multifamily residential district. The property is located at the southwest corner of West Sandage and Humphrey Drive, known as 7841 West Sandage Road. Is there a staff report?
Yes, sir. Just a few brief comments. Again, this is the same subject property we just discussed under the rezoning, and the proposal is for a single lot, 2.02 acres, and the proposal is to put the 6 duplex buildings on the single lot. The map here, actually, this should now be R4 since you did rezone the property, and we have requirements for zoning standards in the R4 zoning district, and this is kind of a formula that shows you how large of a property you would need to have 12 dwelling units, and it basically says you have to have a certain amount for the first dwelling unit, certain size for second and third units, and then 2,800 square feet for each additional unit. So in this particular case, with 12 dwelling units being proposed, if you do that math, you end up with a requirement that the site needed to be at least 1.06 acres, and here we have a 2-acre site, which is about twice as large as what's required. We have all of the setbacks properly noted on the plat, and again, these setbacks are being applied as if it's a, again, 1 lot. So, all along Sandage Road is considered the frontage, not along their private driveway or street. So that's where you would measuring your front yard setback. And again, we're in R4, the maximum dwelling units per acre is 15 dwelling units per acre, and they're proposing just under 6 dwelling units per acre, so they're compliant with the standards. Again, we have a private gated street. One of the requirements associated with the subdivision plat is to do improvements along Sandage Road, including a sidewalk. And if you recall, last year when you approved the Olive Branch RV Park, there were also requirements to improve the frontage of Sandage Road. So we'll be extending sidewalk all along that frontage. Again, we do have utilities out there. We have water, sewer, and gas that are available to the subject property as shown on this drawing. Our Planning Commission did review this item also at their meeting of December 12th, and by a unanimous 5-0 margin did pass a motion to approve, subject to the 6 conditions as noted, and that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Gambone. Any questions of the board regarding the staff report? Any motions?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve as presented, but also with 3 additional items that we discussed earlier. To accept the stated 1,904 square feet heated living space that the applicant stated as a minimum. Construction material would be a minimum of 50% brick or stone. The remaining balance would be a non-wood or composite surface or material such as hardy board. And then lastly, direct the developer to work with our staff in designing the continuity of the fencing with the adjacent RV park.
Thank you, Mr. Earhart. So I'm hearing 1904 minimum square footage, 50% brick minimum, the remainder being non-wood like hardy board or composite wood, and for the developer to work with staff in fence design in conjunction with the Olive Branch RV Park. That's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Hamilton. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Mayor, just for clarification, just in case anybody sees it in the minutes, conditions of that sort are appropriate for the site plan,
Okay.
which was approved with the rezoning. And so for the subdivision item, that's just approving the subdivision plat, not necessarily addressing conditions as to whatever structures are built within that plat. If the applicant was okay with those conditions, the board has approved it unanimously, we'll reflect the conditions that Alderman Earhart added in the site plan approval, which was the prior item, rather than in the board's approval of the subdivision plat. Because the subdivision plat just divides a lot.
Yes.
And the issues like brick content and things of that nature are appropriate in the site plan that was approved as part of the original.
Okay, well, I misunderstood and was confused. That's why I asked earlier. I got it backwards. But
Yeah.
If there's applicant in agreement, I saw some head nods with those items that were covered. Are you still in agreement with that? Come forward. Huh?
We're just gonna write them down in a different spot, but those would be the conditions.
Good evening again. I'm Ruby Harvey, and we acknowledge the input that has been provided. We accept the terms that were stated, and we'll look forward to working with the planning office to ensure that we are in alignment with what has been agreed to tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Harvey.
Thank you
Very much.
Be a good project. We wish you well with it.
And contrary to social media disinformation, it doesn't take it down Sandwich Hills Apartments. Although I did receive a call about that and an email because of misinformation. It's amazing. Social media's got some positives, but definitely some negatives as well. But just happens to be on the same street, does nothing to those apartments. But thank you for developing in our city and look forward to seeing what this will look like. You bet. Next item. Item number 3, consideration of application to vacate the existing Argos 3 lot subdivision submitted by Nick Croonan Civil Link on behalf of Mark Matthews, John Mark LLC property owner. The 7.01 plus or minus subject property is zoned R3 Planned Residential District and is located on the north side of College Road and just west of Highway 305. Is there a report?
Yes, sir, and I was going to give you a joint report for this item number 3 that you just announced, as well as item number 4, which is a final plat for one lot Argos subdivision in a joint presentation, but it would require 2 separate motions if that's okay to move forward.
Board's okay with joint presentation, and we can take them one at a time. You okay with that? Yes, sir.
It's probably easiest to show you this through pictures. This is Highway 305, College Road, and we're on this area right here. And Argos 3-lot subdivision, this is one that was approved a few years back. It was recorded on June 30th of 2021, and what's shown in the yellow outlines are lots 1, 2, and 3. They're all a little bit over 2 acres in size, and total of about 7 acres there. And that's what's being requested to be vacated. So what's shown there on my drawing there would no longer be there, but that's the way the property is currently subdivided. And it's proposed to be replatted into a single lot with a slightly different configuration shown in the black outline there. And there's an existing home on this piece of property, and the proposed lot would be 2.17 acres in size. And so This all kind of goes back to the Old River Farm development that was approved a couple years ago, and I've outlined those lots 1, 2, and 3 of current Argo subdivision on the Old River Farm master plan. So Mr. Matthews essentially purchased all of that property, including those platted lots, and then he's made a deal with the owner of one of those lots or part of one of those lots to basically reform it in this configuration. And this is just a blow up of the southern area showing the proposed configuration. Now, in the original Old River Farm plan, that was intended to be lot 73 of that development, but the owner there of this property's decided they would prefer not to be part of Old River Farm because they don't want to be restricted by the covenants and restrictions and homeowners association dues and all of that. So that's why this is basically coming back as a separate lot to basically redo the Argo subdivision. And this just shows you a copy of the final plat that was prepared by Civil Link. Our planning commission reviewed this item, or both items, at their meeting of December 12th, and by unanimous vote, they did approve or recommend approval of the plat vacation for the 3 lots, and then replatting as 1 lot, shown here subject to the 5 conditions as noted. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Gambone. Any questions of Mr. Gambone regarding the staff report? Does the applicant have anything else to add? Okay, thank you, Mr. Crooner. Any questions or motions from the board? Mr. Wallace, motion to approve as is. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Ms. Hamilton, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to make a separate motion, that
No,
one for
number
the
4,
vacation
thank
and
you.
one for the new
Vacate.
plat?
Is there a motion or any questions on item number 4 now that 3's closed out? Mr. Wallace, motion on 4 to pass as is. Is that correct, Mr. Wallace? Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Collins, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item, consideration of application for a civil site plan review for a C-store with gas pumps submitted by Henry Stratton Associate, Colliers International, on behalf of property owner Fairway Land LLC. The request is to approve the site plan for a permitted C-store with gas pumps on a 1.34 plus or minus acre property on the northeast corner of Alexander Road and Highway 302. The property is zoned C4 Planned Commercial District and is known as 1019 Ridgeway Industrial Drive. Staff report.
Yes, sir. Just a few brief comments. The board may recall a couple of months ago, you all had approved this site for a Mr. Clean Car Wash. And in this Fox Hunt PUD, this one's a little bit unique. It's atypical of most planned developments because in this case, it requires you to approve a site plan for any type of development in there. So you did previously approve this for Mr. Clean Car Wash. Apparently, they decided not to move forward with that project, so another developer has come in and is proposing the construction of a convenience store. So what you're being asked to do tonight is basically approve the site plan. One thing that I wanted to note is in that project text, the C-store is something that is permissible by right. So it's not an issue as to whether or not that C-store can go forward or not. The C-store is already permitted by right, so this is just simply approving the site plan for the store. And that's what's shown here. It's a rendered site plan. It does comply with the project text in terms of the setbacks. We have 2 project entrances off of Alexander. You have a right in, right out. We have a full entrance off of Ridgeway Industrial Drive on the north side. We did check our number of parking spaces. The building is a little bit over 6,000 square feet in size, and that would meet they would meet the parking requirements with 31 spaces. We did, in terms of the plans that were proposed, you're required to do 1 street tree for every 35 feet of frontage, and this property has a lot of frontage along Highway 302 and Alexander, as well as Ridgeway Industrial Drive, so there's a requirement to do 25 street trees. They're plan that they submitted was a little bit short of that, so that's reflected in the conditions. You also have a required hedge along to screen all of the parking spaces, which was included on the plans. As far as the building elevations, they do have a brick facade over top of some masonry units located at the bottom. Probably at 6,000 square feet, you should probably expect that there would probably be some retail bays in addition to the C-store, because it's a fairly large building. This item was reviewed by our Planning Commission at their meeting of December 12th, and by a unanimous 5-0 margin, they did approve the site plan subject to the 5 conditions as noted. One of those is that they would provide a full set of civil site, landscape plans, completed building elevations, and a photometric plan to the staff for our full technical review and approval. They are adding sidewalks along the perimeter of the property along both roads, and then we've asked them to do a crosswalk across Ridgeway Industrial Drive connecting the 2 sidewalks. Number 3 reflects the need for an updated landscape plan showing all of the trees that are required. And then we've given them an advisory comment. This didn't include any signage, so they'll have to meet the city's signage requirements, including a 12-foot height limit on the monument sign that they would be permitted to do. And of course, they would be required to obtain a building permit before commencing any type of construction. So that concludes the staff presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gambone. Board, any questions regarding the staff report? Does the applicant have anything else to add? Is the applicant here for this application? Okay. Board, any questions of the staff or any motions?
Motion to approve as presented.
Mr. Dickerson, motion to approve as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Collins. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving forward on the agenda to new business items, consideration of a facility use agreements with the Arc of Northwest Mississippi and the DeSoto County Dream Center with the donation of associated use fees. Mr. Dye, do you have that?
Yes, sir, I can take that. The board is familiar with these 2 organizations. Both of them qualify for donations from public entities. The board donates to these entities as part of its annual budget. And both of these organizations are holding a fundraiser jointly at the park in April of this next year and have requested a donation of the use of space at the park. And so you analyze a request for use of space the same way you would request for a monetary donation. You have to have statutory authority under both situations, and the board does have statutory authority to donate the use of the park space to these groups for their event in April.
The certificate of insurance is included, as well as the proposed open container area, which would be on the map on the last page of your handout or your document.
Yes, sir, and that actually relates to item 2, which is a related request from the board. As part of their event in April, they're requesting a waiver of the city's open container prohibition, and there would be hours that are listed in their application for their event, and the space, which would consist of a map in your packet, which would consist of the track area and the adjoining parking lot area. So items 1 and 2 are in conjunction with one another.
Thank you.
Is this the festival they had down at the soccer park and they're just moving it?
Moving it, Mr. Nichols, I see shaking his head,
Okay.
and Mr. Campbell basically growing it a little bit to a larger scale. Okay, 3 head nods, we've got to be right now. Okay, larger scale, moving it, yes, sir. Motion, is that item 1, or take one at a time? Motion on 1, Mr. Wallace, is that right? Mr. Wallace makes a motion to approve item 1. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Dickerson. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Item 2 is the outdoor festival related to the other item, proposed open container, as well as the red line that's drawn on your map on the last page as far as where this would take place.
Make a motion approved.
Mr. Collins, motion to approve as is. Is there a second? Second, Ms. Aldridge. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 is consideration of approval for sewer extension funding agreement with Lick Creek and Cascades Town Center. Is that Mr. Dyer, Mr. Swims?
Probably joint. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead. I can explain the beginning, and Andy, if leave anything out from an engineering perspective, just jump in. But, the board will recall that the developer of the Cascades had requested substantial city financial assistance towards their portion of sewer improvements necessary to serve that development. Apart and really separate from that, there is a general overall need to upgrade what we call a Lick Creek sewer line that runs from basically Highway 305 to the Ross Road wastewater treatment plant. And that's a need of the city regardless of the Cascades development. And so what is before the board tonight is an agreement that would allow the Cascades to contribute to the cost of that already needed city project in a percentage that's in proportion to the amount of flow that the Cascades project would contribute to that line once they develop fully. And so the percentage is about 10%, or it is 10% of the construction total that the developer would contribute to the city to go towards the overall cost of that project. And that is to compensate for the amount of flow in the line that would be attributable to the development once it's built out. So this is a sewer project. Mr. Swims can explain the need for the project in further detail. What's before the board is just the funding agreement, which would require the developer to submit its contribution to the city in advance of the city awarding a construction contract.
As y'all recall, we've gone through several different phases of looking at the sewer issues that we have out there. If y'all may remember that we did a sewer study. Neil Schaefer performed that for us. They came back and basically did a report showing the amount of flows, where everything is coming from, and it does take on a considerable amount of sewage from some of the areas that have been in Olive Branch for a number of years. So once we got down to the point where we were at the Cascades, and that's what had brought up a lot of these concerns about how we were going to serve sewer with with Cascades, was that it was operating at capacity or near capacity. So what the study had reflected actual flow amounts when we got to the manhole that's basically at the very southwest corner of the Cascades development, and we'll be following to the west to tie into the Ross Road treatment plant. That's the project that we've got designed. So we're ready to do a design on that. When we actually went back and did do a calculation, because we showed what flows were coming from Cascades, what was coming from the north, and what was coming from the east, it hit about 10% almost exactly, just based on the numbers that showed up in the report. So we felt like that was a proper number to go with as far as moving forward with construction and letting the Cascades development be a part of the sewer project.
The board approved the preliminary plat of the Cascades back in, I believe, Mr. Gambone, that was November of '22. When the preliminary plat was approved, one of the conditions of that plat approval stated that the developer needed to negotiate a cost-sharing agreement with the city for this sewer project. And so that's what the developer has done, that's what staff has done. And so that agreement, if approved, would satisfy that condition in their preliminary plat approval.
Any
Let me
questions?
commend y'all for doing that. This sounded horrible when they first wanted all of it completely for us to fund it all. But this sounds like a very fair agreement that has been worked out on both sides, and I think it's an excellent job by staff and the Cascades to come to this agreement.
Well, thank you. We feel like it's an equitable agreement that is not arbitrary. It's based on a flow percentage, which is a equitable way of allocating cost.
Right. And this in no way obligates the city in any fashion for the roadway improvements on 305, which is 100% the development's responsibility. around $4 to $6 million worth of improvements needed for Highway 305.
That's true, Mayor, and this has no bearing on the TIF approvals either. So it changes the TIF arrangement in no respect.
When would this money be spent? I mean,
Mr. Swims, what's the project timeline?
Well, we've got the plans ready. We've only had one parcel that we had to acquire easement from. That's been done. We've got a modification that has to be done to the plans for where we're tying in at the Ross Road Treatment Plant. So we should be ready to advertise and bid very soon. And our intent was to get the lowest and best bid, determine who that is, and between that time and the time we let the project, that's when we would require the funding from the Cascades developer toward the project before we entered into construction.
Did that answer your question?
I don't know.
When do you anticipate that? First half of '24 award, second half of '24?
Yes, first half of '24.
First half of '24.
I was just wondering about the funding, you know. As far as I know, we didn't have any budget.
Isn't that part of the ARPA funding that we?
No, this is a separate,
Okay.
Mr. May, is there an amount budgeted for the project?
There is an amount budgeted in this year's budget for it.
There's an
This
amount
would be-
budgeted in this year's budget, and that amount may have to be amended depending on what the estimated construction cost is.
Well, that's what I was thinking, probably amended.
Right.
There's a strong possibility when the bids come in, we'll have to make an amendment.
Okay.
Any other questions?
What, yes, I still didn't know, we're gonna start the project in 2024?
We have the plans ready. We should be able to start the project in 2024 if we have the funding. That gets in place, then, yeah, that's our intent. So there should be nothing to hold us back.
Or are you kinda waiting on the Cascades to kick it off?
No, well,
We're gonna move ahead.
Right.
it's gonna be a city
Okay.
project.
I think that's the point, that we need to do this work anyway, regardless to what Cascades does or doesn't do as they develop.
Well, yes and no.
We got, I guess, flow from the hospital all the way over that needs more capacity. Any other questions?
Well, I make a motion, we approve the agreement.
Mr. Dickerson, motion to approve.
Just one quick question. Will this help alleviate some of the backups that's coming up through the Bell Ridge area and things that's been happening there?
The Bell Ridge area actually ties in further to the south, and so that this is not flowing into that, but this does tie in. So the area that we're increasing it to, Bell Ridge eventually drains to it and flows to it.
So that would benefit from it somewhat.
It just depends on where the backups are occurring, but I think we've taken care of a lot of the backups with the interceptor sewer that they did a number of years ago, so, yeah, I think that those have been resolved, but, this will, anything that will tie into this system.
So is that, earlier I made the statement from the hospital back toward the west, is that would tie in, correct? And we need extra capacity there?
That's the very eastern end of this whole sewer system is where the hospital is. That's where it kind of begins, so yes, that ties into it as well.
You had a motion from Dickerson, but no second.
Yep. The motion from Alderman Dickerson was approved as is. Is there a second?
I will second.
Second, Mr. Earhart. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Consideration of approval, item 4, to allow the operation of golf carts, also known as low-speed vehicles, on certain streets within the city. Boards has that document before you. Several of you helped work on that, I believe, and I know our police department worked on it as well. It basically incorporates all the state requirements for the low-speed vehicles with insurance, a maximum speed amount of 25 miles per hour. Again, it has to be insured, turn signals, et cetera. and those are incorporated into it, and basically our policy, our ordinance would restrict them to streets posted speed limit is 25 miles per hour or less. Y'all must have golf carts. Mr. Collins, motion, second. Mr. Wallace, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. We all did, I believe, and I know everybody get calls. Basically, the person will have to trailer it to the police department and have it inspected and have a decal placed on it and make the checklist that.
I don't know how many people will have to use it.
I've
Have that blinker,
turn signals.
brake light,
Yep.
front lights, everything.
It can't go over 25 miles per hour. That's not the city's ordinance, that's state law. So I don't think I'd want a golf cart that wouldn't go over 25 miles an hour. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Considering, going down the agenda rather, consideration of approval of resolution declaring the intention to issue general obligation bonds and for related purposes.
Mayor, items 5 and 6 are related to one another. The board has discussed during budget preparation time and at other times the need to issue bonds primarily for two purposes. Water and sewer bonds for the annexation-related water and sewer extensions, and then gas system bonds, the proceeds of which would be used towards the new public works facility. The original thought was to issue those as two totally separate processes where you would have separate resolutions of intent for separate amounts, and then you would have two concurrent bond issues going. On the recommendation of our outside professionals, our finance and bond counsel, they've told us that we really can structure it more efficiently by having one resolution of intent for a cumulative amount, which is why the amount is higher in your packet than what we have discussed previously, because we're combining two separate bond issues into one. And then the second item, after declaring a resolution of intent to issue those bonds, if we go through the Mississippi Development Bank, the board has to have retained on the minutes an underwriter and a financial advisor. And so the second resolution, new business 6, is a resolution authorizing the employment of government services and Raymond James to serve in those capacities if we eventually go through the development bank. So the two bond resolutions, as items 5 and 6 again are related, Mayor, they're recommended for approval, and this will be the first step in a multi-step process. You'll have eventually a resolution coming back to the board at some point in time in the spring, and perhaps multiple resolutions, because these bonds can be issued in several different series and structured in ways to make best use of the funds and the interest rates and the timing. You do one umbrella resolution, and then we'll come to you at the most advantageous times with different series of bonds for various purposes. And I recommend two separate votes, Mayor.
Okay. CFO Jason May, anything to add from the financial side?
No, sir, this is, Brach covered.
Gotcha. Is there a motion on the first item? Is there a motion on item 5?
I'll make a motion with a resolution intent to issue bonds.
Mr. Collins makes a motion for 5, resolution declaring an intent to issue the GO bonds. Is there a second? Second, Ms. Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, consideration of approval of resolution authorizing the employment of professionals in connection with the issuance of general obligation bonds and for related purposes.
So moved.
Mr. Dickerson, motion. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Collins. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And I personally extend my thank you to the board and CFO Jason May and previous administrations for the city being in a great financial posture to get good ratings and to be able to apply for these. That's been a long history of good management, allowing the city to get good ratings and to be able to apply and get the best rates for our citizens. So hats off to y'all for the years of work you did on that. Item 7, consideration of request to approve or update our public records ordinance. And basically, it's to change the hours of inspection of records from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., to make it 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., and the photocopies increased from 15 cents per page to 25 cents per page, and 50 cents per page for color copies, minimum hourly rate for research of $20 per hour, and add acceptance of credit card and debit card as method of payments. Mr. Stewart, this puts us pretty much in line with other cities, or maybe still somewhat lower than other cities, I assume, based on our conversation.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Earhart, motion to approve, second. Ms. Hamilton, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 8, consideration of recommendation to approve a professional geotechnical consultation agreement with Burns, Cooley, and Dennis Incorporated for a geotechnical consultation site visit at 4836 Victoria Cove for the lump sum fee of $1,800. Basically just a method for professional outsider to determine the possible issue of a sewer line that has began to sink and created problems in a yard near a seawall, although it's a lake, a seawall, a retaining wall. So trying to determine what's the root cause of this damage. Is that, Mr. Andre, anything to add to that? Just we'll, okay, Mr. Wallace's motion, is there a second? Second, Ms. Aldridge, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Number 9, authorize the City of Olive Branch to advertise and seek bids for pavement preservation. Mr. Swims?
Yes, sir. I've got 3 roads that we've listed down to do for pavement preservation. Just briefly, if y'all will remember, we did a pavement preservation. We solicited bids last year. They came in too high, and the Board of Aldermen chose not to proceed with it. We ended up going with more with overlay on most of our streets. We still have the intent to try to issue or do solicit bids again for pavement preservation, and hopefully we're going to get better bids. We've done a number of things to help make these come in better. This is, when we do this year, we're intending for this to be a 1-year contract, not a term bid. We've been carefully selecting the roads that we wanted to do. We think that they're going to have, the roads that we've chosen, I think would give us better prices. They're not going to have as many issues with traffic control, and et cetera. And we've set it so that there's a substantial enough pavement preservation, I guess, to get the prices to where we want them. So we're hopeful that we can go after these roads and get good prices back. The roads that we put on here this year for pavement preservation consideration was Old Goodman Road, all the way from where it connects to 302 on both ends. That would be a double micro is something that has had good success in, we've done it in the city before, South Haven's done it, we've done it in several places, and so we think that that's a good application for Old Goodman Road. College Road from 305 to Craft, same thing with a double micro. And on Highway 78, basically the area that the city maintains that goes from the Goodman Road overpass to the Public Works building. So that's what I wanted the board to consider to allow us to move forward with that. I know I had some concerns from Alderman Earhart about some other roads. I wanted to give y'all this handout to kind of show where we're at to date. I set it on, I gave it to each one of you before the meeting, so you can reflect back and see what we have currently with Lehman Roberts in our term bid. We've got 6 roads that you see there listed: Camp Creek Boulevard, Forest Hill, Irene, Davidson Road, East Sandage Road, Magnolia Road, and Alexander Road. So those are currently what we're trying to get prepped and ready for overlay. So if you put those together with the roads that we're suggesting that we look at for pavement preservation, that brings us just about to this year's budget. So we had a $4 million budget that we're trying to work within, and So just putting this before y'all, see if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them for you.
And by this year's budget, we mean between now and the end of September 2024, this fiscal year budget.
Yes, sir. Right, that's correct.
Will we be able to address some roads that may have problems that we have to, I mean, it always comes up.
Well, the numbers that you see before you here, I think they're gonna be pretty good on the upper portion of it. That's gonna be the overlay. The portion at the bottom, we haven't gotten any prices back on them, so we don't know where those are coming in. What we did was we took last year's prices that came in very high, and we tried to do a reduction to them, to just say what we think would be acceptable if we move forward to it. But that comes up to right at the $4 million. So if this worked out, we would not have additional money to go and do any other roads besides the one we have on this list.
But this does not include Public Works' patch and repair budget. It does not include that. This is just engineering.
Andy, let me ask you one thing on this. I went back and looked at our 5-year plan, and 2 of the 3 roads, the College Road and the Highway 78, were listed in the 2024 plan already. The Old Goodman Road was in the 2025. We moved it up a year. There were 2 roads that were very similar in length and estimated cost. The other one was from State Line back to the west, or back to Germantown Road. Is there any particular reason we picked the Old Goodman rather than the State Line?
I don't think so. I think that there is some degree that the Board of Aldermen can choose which roads they want to go with. Now, what we are doing, you've got that where you can pull up the, okay, y'all looking at this. This is the, this is kind of the list that we work from. So this is the 2024. We had one map that showed what we completed last year. This year, we've kind of moved it over to kind of show what we're trying to achieve, what type of treatment we're trying to do to each road, and
if you look on that graphic where it says Goodman Road East, it shows 2.57 miles. The State Line Road was 2.42 miles. I mean, it was almost identical in length that needed to be done, and it's in the 2025 also.
Okay.
Which is the next slide.
Well, okay, you only had that one sheet? Okay, I thought we had all 4 of them. I've got it here in front of me though.
I just was curious, when we moved something up from 2025 to 2024, they were both almost identical in length, and estimated costs were about the same. Both of them on your slide showed a double micro.
You were looking at the original report?
The original report, yeah.
Okay. Well, it gets a little bit confusing because of the way our bids turned out, and we had to go back and change some things. And then there's been some adjustments to the types of treatment that we want to do to roads and so forth. I'd have to go back and look at that with you to see. But if there is a road that's moved further down, that was down on the list, we had come to some determination that this one needed it more, I guess.
Okay, well, that's my question, because they both looked identical on the original plan within just a 1/10 of a mile, and the estimated cost was almost the same. So I just was curious what thought process moved in the Old Goodman rather than the State Line.
Yeah, I think both of them probably need some treatment and are probably along the same lines. So I think that we could look at any one of those roads that fell into that, and we can make some changes on it. But now this is kind of the map that we were working from and trying to make the selections of which ones we wanted to do. We can't afford to do everything on there and stay within our budget. So we picked some. The ones that are in red are the ones that are up for consideration for overlay, and I've given you the list of which ones we selected from that. And then we went back and we looked at the remainder roads and tried to pick which ones we were going to do. So on this list, you see there's several that we did not select. So Craft Road is not on the list. That was down for a double micro. That was going to be a fairly expensive road to do. We had both micro and overlay, and so I'm not quite sure about that road, but we kind of put that one off, trying to see if possible some other type of assistance might help with that road, because that would be a very expensive road to overlay or to do a double micro on. So Jeff Browning Boulevard at the bottom, Dunn Lane, we did not put those on there. Pleasant Hill Road, the overlay, that one was not one that we were recommending. But any of these roads, I think could be argued that they could be chosen if we want to stay with the plan and the way we've been approaching roads. We selected them, but we did determine that there were some roads that we thought were probably worse than others. And it wasn't always the worst road. It's that, you know, when you do a micro seal on a road, you're not picking the worst road. What you're trying to do is extend the life of a road that could in the future be expensive. We're trying to get it to the point where we're not always focusing on the absolute worst roads, because once you do that, you're spinning your wheels, always making the repairs, and you're never catching up. When we spend some money on our worst roads, but also some monies through a micro seal, you're actually stretching out those lives and of those roads, and they'll last a lot longer, which is going to give you more money in the future. So that's kind of the thought process. But yep.
Sections of it, and if it's really, really terrible, we just have to reprioritize, you know, make a shift. But I know that, Mr. Fessmeyer is not here right now. I don't know the normal length
that his team would go. You know, I know they can't do a mile or half a mile, but they can do patch and repair. But if one gets real bad shape, we just has to flip them, you know, if it's that bad.
Do they have the ability to mill up a small portion of a street? Do they have that equipment?
I don't think we have mill equipment, do we, Mr. Andra?
Not large portions, they can do small sections, mill and cut out.
Say 20 or 30 feet wide, they could mill something up that small.
Well, are you talking about taking up a so if you mill against the curb, I think that Public Works purchased something so that they can actually mill along the curb, and then if they're gonna dig out any bad spots.
Well, what I was looking at, we've got a situation that I talked to Cole earlier about, that back earlier in the year, that they've made multiple patches in the same area of the street.
Right.
So, you know, it looks terrible and it's not smooth, and I was wondering if we could just take all of that up, mill it all up from curb to curb, about 20 feet wide, and just replace it all with one big patch.
So it's
And I didn't
usually,
know if they had the equipment to do that.
I would think that's
We-
possible. They did a lot of mill work on the new trail that went in. That's 10 feet wide, and that equipment, I'm sure.
Okay.
it's usually indicative of a base failure. And if you're having a problem and it's not holding up, they probably need to go down, saw cut it, bring it down, get down to a good hard surface and bring it up compacted, and you'll solve the problem. But a lot of times what they do with Public Works does work. It works well, but it's always hard to tell exactly where the failure's gonna be until something comes back, when after a certain point, you know, you need to do something more substantial, and so they can do that.
Any other questions?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation by engineering.
Motion to approve by Mr. Dickerson. Second by Mr. Wallace. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to leave regular session with the intention of going into executive session? Ms. Henderson, motion. Is there a second? Second, Ms. Hamilton. All in favor?
The H twins.
All opposed? Is there a motion to go into executive session with the intention of discussing items 1 through 8 as listed, and 1 through 9 as listed, updated agenda? Yep. Personnel matter in the court department, personnel matter in the dispatch or the communications department, personnel matters in the gas department, personnel matter in the IT department, personnel matter in the planning, building department, personnel matter in the police department, personnel matters in the street department, personnel matters in the water maintenance department, and acquisition of property discussion with city attorney. Is there a motion to go in executive session to discuss those items? Mr. Wallace, motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Mr. Earhart, all in favor? All opposed? We are in executive session.